15 years ago, there were about 250 MarTech companies. Now there's over 20,000. You don't even know where to start.
In a world where 20,000 MarTech vendors are screaming for attention, how do you cut through the noise and build actual trust? Today we're joined by Sean Simon, a 25-year tech veteran and the founder of TrustBlurbs.com and Cogent. From leading sales at global giants like Criteo to building a community of over 500 elite buyers, Sean has mastered the shift from aggressive selling to curated buying. We're diving into why review sites are pay-to-play, how AI is transforming the search for solutions, and why the future of business belongs to those who protect the buyer's time.
The problem with the review sites, it's all pay to play. And if you're not paying, you're not going to have good reviews, or you're not even going to be listed. Too much time is being spent on sales calls to disqualify a vendor rather than focus on the vendors that could do the job. We've got to protect the buyers from the vendors and protect the vendors from themselves. Your story sounds the same because they're all saying we can improve ROAS, we can reduce bounce rate. And they throw in buzzwords like AI and machine learning.
What is the toughest challenge right now for the blurbs? Welcome back to The Next Move with Venkat. Please welcome Sean Simon, joining us from Portland. Hey, Sean.
Hey, it's good to be here. Good to be here.
Welcome to the show. How's it going?
You. It's going well. Yeah. Busy, Q4, but it's good.
All right. I'm really excited for today's conversation. And just for the audience who doesn't know anything about what is really Trust Blurbs and the Cogent, could you please give us an introduction and the background of your businesses?
Yeah. So we started Cogent about 5.5 years ago, partner and I, that worked together on the sales side for many years. And we decided that sales was changing. It was difficult to reach buyers because there's so many vendors, so much noise. So we built a community. We got the people that we knew together on the buy side. We've added people over the years. So now it's a community of over 500 people. And the idea was to understand what their needs were or are, and then go out and curate vendors and vet them out on behalf of the community so we could bring what we think is best of breed to the community so they didn't have to go do all that research themselves because they weren't doing it. They didn't have time and they weren't able to make confident decisions. And so we've been doing that for a while, but we also wanted to make that scalable and automated. And so we started building blurbs about a year and a half ago. And we brought in a third partner, started a separate company. It's called blurbs because sometimes a buyer just needs a blurb. They just need to know what the vendor does so that they can determine whether it's something they should look at. And so we built this. It's still a community approach, but we try and take the vendors and make their profiles consistent. So as a buyer, you can understand and compare vendors more easily before ever engaging in a sales conversation. Too much time is being spent on sales calls to disqualify a vendor rather than focus on the vendors that could do the job and learn more about them. So we try to make that buying process easier to discover, easier to vet, easier to buy.
Got it. Sounds really interesting, the way of how you design the business and all. So what was the initial thought that led to start the Cogent and eventually the blurb?
Yeah. So it must be about 10 years now. My partner and I were working together at Criteo. A lot of people have heard of that company. And we were running sales organizations. He was running the East, I was running the West. And we've been talking about how much more difficult it became, not just for our sales teams, but for us, just to reach the people we knew. And when we would get them on the phone, they'd say, oh, sorry, I didn't even see your email. It just got buried or it just got lost. Right? I get so many emails a day. I just ignore it all. Like it's just gotten out of control. And so we started to sort of dig into why. And there's two reasons why. One, and they're kind of related. One, if you think about the MarTech ecosystem, 15 years ago, there were about 250 MarTech companies on the Lumascape, which is just a diagram of vendors. Now there's over 20,000 vendors, right? Over 35 Lumascapes. So if you were a buyer, you don't even know where to start. But if you're a seller, you're competing with all of these companies trying to gain the attention of the same people. And so you're emailing them, you have your SDRs emailing them, you have SDR software emailing them, and they're ignoring it all. And so we thought there's got to be a better way. There's a shift happening in the way solutions are being bought. And so we wanted to figure out what that was, and that set us off on our journey.
Got it. Yeah, that's a clever model, like almost like flipping the entire sales process. Instead of vendors chasing the buyers. So here you're helping buyers to choose the clarity and help vendors sell with the confidence.
Exact. It's really generating those qualified leads because the buyers are self-selecting the vendors. I know some vendors are like,
Mm.
I hear this all the time from vendors. If I can just get the meeting, I can close the deal. That is hogwash. It's just not true. You can close the deal if you're the right vendor, right? If you're the right solution. But if the buyer is able to do some research and say, okay, these 5 vendors seem like they can do the job, I'm going to ask them some questions anonymously, or I'm going to meet with these 5 vendors, then they know they're not wasting time. They know that they can all do the job. It's just a matter of maybe a couple of questions, couple of features, the people, and the price. Right? So they can make decisions much faster, which in turn accelerates sales cycles for vendors. And we approach it from the sales side. So when we bring a vendor onto the platform, we're helping them craft a page that is going to appeal to today's buyer, and we're helping them make that connection with the right buyers.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, you mentioned during our pre-chat that one of the biggest issues in marketing is trust. So buyers don't really believe reviews sites anymore. So, and vendors often struggle to explain what they actually do. So why do you think that the gap is why does it exist now?
I think there's a couple of things there in what you just said. First, the vendor websites, they're created by marketers, right? And marketers want to tell a story. Unfortunately, every story sounds the same because they're all saying we can improve ROAS, or we can reduce bounce rate. And they throw in buzzwords like AI and machine learning. I mean, I go to some websites and I read it and I have no idea what they do. Or I'll go to their LinkedIn page and read the about section, and it's just a bunch of words, like it's word salad. It doesn't mean anything. So I really don't even know what category they fall into, no less what it is they actually do within that category. So I think that they need help getting out of their own way. And I think the problem with review sites is that when we interviewed over 300 people before we built Blurbs, because we wanted to understand what their process was and what their pain points were in that process. And Blurbs checks the box on every pain point that we heard. But when we asked them about review sites, and there's a handful of them out there in our space, most of them hadn't even heard of the review sites, which was surprising to me. But the ones that had said that they didn't trust them because either all the reviews were positive or they've submitted reviews themselves that weren't positive and they didn't get published. So there's this trust factor there. And then there's this pay to play. Like, yes, a vendor has to pay to be on Blurbs to have a more robust profile. They can pay to improve their profile. But we have vendors on there that aren't paying. We're not going to deprive the buyer of knowing they exist, right? We're just giving the vendor an opportunity to tell their story a better way. So I think the problem with the review sites, it's all pay to play. And if you're not paying, you're not going to have good reviews, or you're not even going to be listed. So it's not really a good resource. I think it's an okay place to go after you've narrowed the list down to say 2 vendors and you can't decide, go read some reviews, right? But you don't know these people, right? So if you can't contact them, you can't ask, okay, what was the problem? What happened here? And, that makes a difference. It could be a person that doesn't work at the company anymore. It might not be a product issue. So there's lots of variables with review sites. I always use the example of Yelp. Right? Yelp is a review site for consumer products. Primarily, people use it, I think, for restaurants. I read reviews of restaurants and I see ones that I like and I see bad reviews. I don't know who those people are. It could be an 80-year-old woman who lives in Nebraska who just has very different tastes than I do, right? And I might like different foods. And so her review doesn't really mean anything to me. So it's difficult to really trust those kinds of reviews if you don't know who the people are.
Yeah, I really agree with you in this point. Yeah, another thing we discussed on our pre-chat, like about the AI. So you are not the AI full company, but you are integrating kind of AI solutions into your business now. So if you could elaborate a little bit about more.
Yeah, I don't see AI as its own thing, at least not yet. I see AI as a tool that vendors can use to make their product better. A lot of vendors that have been around are now using AI to make their products better, or they were using machine learning before and now they're calling it AI. I think people throw it around and use it in different ways. We use a little bit of AI to make our content better, but the majority of the content that we have on Blurbs comes directly from the publishers. We ask the vendors, we ask them 20 questions, right? And we ask every vendor in a category the same questions, and they answer that in their words. We don't touch it. AI doesn't touch it. So you're getting answers from the vendors, right? We use AI to craft the blurb because we don't want to use any jargon, but and we're about to launch an AI search agent that will allow buyers or people that are searching for solutions to say, I'm a fashion retailer. I operate on Shopify, and this is my MarTech stack. I need a new solution to help me with my email or my loyalty or whatever. Well, then it will be able to go through not only the website content, but all of the content that the publishers have given us that lives in our database, which is typically going to be sales decks of one pagers and white papers and reviews. And so we'll be able to provide a much more robust answer to the buyer who's searching, but we'll also be able to do it in the voice of the vendor. That creates differentiation. Everybody talks about their business differently. If everybody's results were AI and they all had the same tone and voice, we'd have no personality in the industry, right? And I think that's really important. You want to work with partners that align with your personality.
Yeah, makes sense. We in our podcast we generally discuss more about the challenges in the businesses, what the leaders are really facing right now in these current trends.
Yeah.
So what is the toughest challenge right now for the blurbs?
Well, not for us. I think for the buyers, right? For the people, for the users. And users at Blurbs would be people that work at brands or agencies in marketing or e-commerce typically, right? And they're using Blurbs because they need a solution. They don't know all of the options they have in a category before they come to Blurbs. And it takes a lot of time. If Blurbs wasn't in the picture, they'd have to go to every vendor website, try and figure out what they do, create spreadsheets and checkboxes and lists and pros and cons and do all this research, right? Because everybody's presenting it differently. Well, we're making it easier for them, right? So the challenge that the buyers have is just understanding who's out there and who does what. The problem the vendor has is just being known, being discovered by a buyer who's in market because there's so much noise out there. So we're helping filter out all that noise, bring buyers and sellers together in one community where there's trust, right? And people can learn about what they need to learn about much more quickly. We want buyers to be able to make decisions in days, not months.
So this industry, especially with the marketing area, with the reviews, they have been evolving a lot, the sentimental analysis, etc. kind of things. So what are the kind of real trends you've been observing in this industry over a period of time?
In the reviews industry or just in the MarTech industry?
Yeah, especially with the reviews, how it used to be previously now. So you people like you just bringing few changes with the businesses like the blurbs. So yeah, I just want to explore more.
Well, I think it starts with the way buyers think, right? I think the generation of buyers that are in the industry now, they prefer, and there's plenty of research to support this, they prefer to do the majority of the research on their own before ever engaging with a vendor. And that doesn't necessarily mean they go to review sites only. They might go to a review site, they might not, but they're really going first to their peers, to their colleagues they work with, people they know in the industry that do what they do. And that is gold, right? They want, if their friends in the industry make a recommendation, they really listen to that. And they don't necessarily trust the reviews, like I was saying earlier, because it doesn't tell them who the person is, right? And I think in tech, it's really important because it's not just about I sell shoes and they sell shoes. You might have very different tech stacks, right? And so one solution might work for one brand and not another. And so I think that, like I said earlier, I think reviews, at least in our industry, are more of a after the fact, like, okay, I've got it down. I want to make sure that this vendor is viewed positively on some of these sites, but it's not where they start. It's where they end. And I think that's the biggest shift with reviews.
Again, in terms of the AI and the AI implementations in the business, especially for the MarTech industry, what kind of expectations you have for the more like in the 2026 or the beyond?
From like an implementation perspective?
Yeah.
Well, Blurbs doesn't get involved in the implementation, right? So what a buyer can do is they come to the site, they read about a vendor, they can read all those questions. So it's like first 10 questions or 20 questions you should ask every vendor. Then they can build a list and then ask the vendors they selected questions anonymously, right? So they can fill it out, send it, it'll go to all the vendors they selected. And then the vendor will answer the questions. So in that process, they could ask them questions like, hey, what does implementation look like? Or who from my organization do I need to include? I think implementation is getting easier. AI is definitely playing a role in that. There's a lot of plug and play solutions they're designed to work with the e-com platforms, whether it's a Shopify Plus or one of the other platforms out there. So I think implementation of software is just becoming easier. I'm sure there's still some categories out there that are more difficult, but I think AI and other technologies are making it faster, less of a consideration, but it's still important.
Where do you want to see Blurbs in the next 12 months?
Yeah, in the next 12 months, we're focused on bringing more vendors onto the platform and bringing more buyers using the platform, right? We genuinely want to create a community between buyers and sellers where there's trust, but there's got to be a starting point, right? And that starting point needs to be a little bit anonymous, right? Because buyers don't necessarily, they know once they expose themselves, they're going to get crushed, right? They're going to get emails and phone calls and LinkedIn messages, and we can't have that happen. So we've got to protect the buyers from the vendors and protect the vendors from themselves, right? And so we're really focused on what is it that buyers need and what is it that vendors need, and find those common synergies and keep building tools that will make the buying process and the selling process better for both sides and create that trust that they really need to have to make the relationships work. So again, we're in high growth mode. So we're focused on, we've got the core product, it's functioning. We're adding some more features like the AI sales agent, or search agent, I should say. And then really it's about bringing more and more people onto the platform and learning from the way they behave. And then, making changes as we learn from them.
Yeah, sounds amazing. Before we wrap up this episode, if you could share 2 or 3 suggestions for the people who is in the same kind of industry, especially for the buyers, what suggestions you would give, and as well as the vendors.
In terms of like what recommendations I would give to each group?
I would say like more a kind of suggestions or the your valuable kind of strategic moves, what they can take in the future, especially based on the current trends.
Yeah, I think if you're a vendor, you need to understand the mindset of a buyer today. When I started out, and a lot of salespeople in this industry started out our careers, 25, 30 years ago, it was all about relationships. And you just wanted to meet somebody face to face and go to lunch, buy a cup of coffee. And you thought, and that was the start of a relationship, and you built trust. Buyers today, because everyone is sort of scattered, especially since the pandemic, everyone kind of lives everywhere. Not a lot of people are in the office. Relationships are really hard to build. If you can build them, they're great, but they're really hard. And so you need to find other ways to make sure buyers understand who you are, what you do, and build trust. That's what we're trying to help them with. And whether they're using us or not, they need to be thinking about that. And I think as a buyer, they need to find tools that are going to help them make more confident decisions, because when you pick the wrong vendor for whatever reason, it's costly, because if you have to rip them out and replace them in 9 months, 12 months, you're back to square one doing all the research again. You've wasted internal resources, and you've wasted that time trying to make a bad solution work, or a bad solution for you work, right? So you find tools like Blurbs that can help you make more confident decisions more quickly, because it shouldn't take 6 months or more to make a decision on a MarTech solution if you already have a problem you're trying to solve for. It doesn't need to be that hard, not today.
Amazing. Yeah, Shian, it was really wonderful chatting with you, and you shared so many valuable insights for both buyers and the vendors. Yeah. If anyone wants to find you out, where they can check out online. Yeah,
trustblurbs.com is really the best place to find us there. Obviously, you can find me on LinkedIn, or my consultancy is cogentcollective.com if you're interested in being a part of that community.
And another thing is, Shian also is hosting a podcast series. So Shian, if you could share a little bit about your podcast.
Yeah, thanks. The MarTech Matrix is the podcast. And what we try and do on the MarTech Matrix is interview vendors or interview people from vendors, like typically it's the CEO or head of strategy or head of product. And what we're trying to do in a typical Blurbs fashion is understand how they got to building the solution. What was the motivation? What was the aha moment? But then really dive right into, what does the product do? What problem does it solve? How does it work? How do you get started, right? Really simplifying that. A lot of that content exists on a surface level on their Blurbs page, but we want to go a little bit deeper, right? If you're interested in a certain solution or a certain category, it's a good way to learn about the category as well as learn about the vendor. So I would encourage people to do that if they're in market. We've got probably 40 episodes that we've done so far. We also interview senior people from the brand side. These are chief marketing officers, heads of agencies, and we talk to them about their process for finding solutions and what they do and what's important to them. And hopefully that helps buyers learn about how their peers and their seniors in the industry are looking at solutions, and maybe that'll help them do a better job or a more efficient job of finding their own solutions.
Got it.
So you can find that. Amazing. I appreciate you giving me that plug. I think if they go to the MarTech Matrix martech.com. There's a website there where we've got a lot of the content, but you can also find some of the content on the LinkedIn, on the Martech Matrix LinkedIn page as well.
Got it. Really amazing. And thank you for the joining show. And it was really wonderful talking with you. And I hope the audience also will find so much of valuable content from this episode. And please share it with the people who really love this type of content. And yeah, see you again in another episode. Thank you, Sean.
I appreciate it. Thank you.